Throughout Star Trek's episodes, Starfleet has encountered and catalogued many strange new life forms and occasionally been encountered in turn. Hi, Rick here, and this short video is exploring just what exactly is NAGILUM, the mysterious entity that captured the USS Enterprise and almost forced the crew's hand to self-destruct. This is a rather obscure creature as it only appears in one episode, and there aren't even many other stories or sources that include the appearance of such a being in the extended lore. So, for the most part, we're going to have to build off what we've seen in the show. It might also be easier to look at what he's not as a process of elimination. In a mapping mission to the unexplored Morgana Quadrant, a sector of space unvisited by manned Federation ships, the Enterprise encounters a strange hole in space, apparently the first time that a phenomenon like this has been recorded. However, upon being consumed by it, they begin to experience strange events, such as the emergence of enemy combatants and exits that move. Not long after, the entity known as NAGILUM reveals itself to the crew. He claims to be immortal and to have no concept of death, and this is backed up by its motivations in the show, as he is amazed by the concept of mortality. He describes it as a limited existence and is rather baffled by the idea that a being is simply here, then not. To this end, he kills the con officer and decides that he will kill a further third of the ship in order to study it more. Eventually, his plan is thwarted when Captain Picard initiates the self-destruct, meaning that none would remain for NAGILUM to study. NAGILUM concludes that humanity is rather more militant, and they stubbornly attempt to defy the inevitable, letting them begrudgingly go. This encounter also makes clear a number of things. NAGILUM was capable of much within the pocket of nothing that made up its realm. It could manifest form and substance, such as a Romulan warbird and facsimiles of the USS Yamato, and it not only was telepathic, but could kill with a thought. Deanna Troi used her empathic abilities to eventually detect its presence. Originally, having trouble conceiving of its existence, she describes it as vast. Betazoid abilities do not require a biological brain from which to gather readings. Instead, they perceive anything that could be counted as conscious thought, formless or not. At the very least, this shows that NAGILUM's thought processes were alien enough to be unreadable, but not so different. Not only was it able to simply kill crew members at a whim, but it could also seize control, or at least impair the functions of the body in order to examine its effects. It also exhibited curiosity and a desire to learn of the crew it had captured. However, its intent could be described as malevolent. This is because it was effectively experimenting with death against the will of the captured, and despite NAGILUM being initially unaware of the tragedy of death, such a drive to continue to toy with the crew could be described accurately as malevolent in my opinion. Maybe unintentional if I was being lenient, but still it persisted in its study even after it became aware that death was not a pleasant experience. So NAGILUM was a dick. It first became aware of the idea of death from the minds of the crew, essentially reading their minds to learn of their concepts. In this way too, it picked up the names of the senior staff even before it fully understood them. For example, it learned their names before it learned about androids and genders. After being told of the differences, it claimed it now understood. So while NAGILUM is very powerful, intelligent and psychic, it was not omniscient. It had to be made aware that there was information to pursue before it could pluck the answers from the minds of its captives. It seems to be formless and incorporeal, but could manifest itself in a number of different ways. It appeared to the crew as a face, proportions distorted, but in an effort to provide a reference point for the crew to commune with. This image was presented on both view screens and later on Picard's personal computer, and also appeared in the forms of Data and Troi at one point. These manifestations could simply have been illusions by its immense psychic powers, but it should be noted that Riker and Worf were able to beam over to the false Yamato to take readings of the ship's hull. They concluded it was not made from standard Starfleet materials, but in fact made from a substance foreign to their understanding, and they did not die in the vacuum of nothingness, so there really was a ship there. Also, the torpedoes from the Romulan warbird were real and damaging to the Enterprise. The thing is, it manifested both the Romulan warbird with a cloaking signature and an accurate representation of the Yamato within minutes of the Enterprise being within the void. Sure, this information may have been plucked from the minds of the crew, but with such precision as to fool the Enterprise into thinking these readings were genuine? I think it far more likely that whatever mental powers NAGILUM had also allowed it to search through the information of the computers and draw out both a convincing adversary and an ally for its subjects. Its ability to interfere with the ship's systems is supported by the fact that at one point it simply shut off main power. However, the Galaxy-class starship merely switched to reserves. Even after the Enterprise was released, it contacted Picard via the terminal in his office, showing that in some regards, NAGILUM's powers were not entirely limited to the confines of this strange realm. Speaking of which, the void itself, the hole in space, was mentioned to be unique by Data, as nothing similar to it had ever been encountered. It was recorded as nothingness, but despite those claims, there have been similar instances of void. In 2268, the original Enterprise NCC-1701 and the USS Intrepid encountered a giant single-celled lifeform shrouded in a zone of darkness. Initially, no readings could penetrate it, and all probes and scans were absorbed by it or resulted in some very nasty interference and noise. However, despite not being any state of matter, ships' shields registered it, so therefore it was likely some form of energy. Similar to this is the existence of null space, a realm of intense fields of gravity, energy and such that absorbed any energy entering it, and although it lies beyond a threshold, much as NAGILUM's realm did, it was also discovered in 2368 and was nothing like the void. We also have other realms, such as fluidic space, which I've already done a theory video on, but suffice to say, no. Nor is it a realm of subspace, such as the Sologen-based lifeforms realm as seen in Schisms. These beings shared the experimental nature of NAGILUM, but their layer of the universe is a rather well understood one by Federation science, being the bedrock of much FTL technology in Star Trek, so it's very unlikely that the Enterprise would not recognise subspace when they saw it. This also rules out the void encountered by Voyager in a Delta Quadrant, as this was a subspace pocket too. Honestly, the closest thing I can think of is the interphasic realms between the universes that the USS Defiant disappeared into before crossing over into the Mirror Universe. In Kirk's brief time there, he described this void as an endless nothing and a terrifyingly lonely existence. Exposure to the interphasic rifts, however, causes all sorts of problems, such as insanity. So if NAGILUM's void was a form of interphasic rift, he'd have to have done something about that. Then again, NAGILUM did show the ability to alter and bend space within his realm. With the Enterprise D engaged up to Warp 6 within the Pocket Void, only to find itself back where it started, and the strange spatial phenomena encountered on the Force Yamato. NAGILUM seemingly could fold this pocket at whim. Again, this could all have been an illusion, but we are shown shots of the Enterprise actually flying around, and the ship's instruments say so, and no one contradicts that claim that they are in motion in the show, so I'm going to say NAGILUM could alter the realm as it desired. This also makes sense if it was trying to create a laboratory environment. In such a setup, you want to control as many of the variables as possible to prevent unforeseen outside interference, so a dimension that you are in complete control of would be perfect. What made NAGILUM's realm unique, however, was the seeming lack of dimension. Quite how a three-dimensional ship, let alone one in linear time, could exist in a dimensionless plane baffles me. And to be fair, it baffled the crew too. Communication through the boundary of this zone is impossible, however, even when there was an opening present back to real space. I'd suggest that this might be because subspace simply isn't present here or something. This could explain why the Enterprise could not communicate outside of the tear, nor warp out of it. But again, they never find out, so nor do we. What is apparent, however, is that this opening did have a boundary that could be controlled and withdrawn, as seen when it consumed and eventually released the Enterprise. And as Data puts it, the very fact that it has discernible edges and that they entered it means that it is very much real. In conclusion, NAGILUM itself is a mystery, but more understandable than the realm it created. The void defies everything the crew understood of space, and the nearest thing that they could compare it to was another dimension. We're not even 100% certain that this is the native realm of NAGILUM, or merely some pocket lab that it was able to pop into existence to snare curious passers-by. It could open, close, manipulate and create at will within the confines, like some sort of advanced holodeck, but not even the Federation's sensors, which are some of the best around, could make heads nor tails of it. This leads to 3 conclusions in my eyes. 1. NAGILUM is truthful in its claims to be immortal and without death, and making it an extra-dimensional entity looking to pry into the perceivable universe, perhaps even formed from or actually be the void around it. Very weird and eldritch, full of contradicting concepts that the puny mortal mind could not understand, and therefore very fun. 2. NAGILUM may not be as esoteric as all that, and the Federation sensors just could not identify anything it was using as it's far too advanced. This is supported by Riker's claim that the fake Yamato's materials were far beyond anything they could do. Or 3. NAGILUM is merely a very powerful illusionist and psychic. The last one is undeniably true, as we witness it first hand in the episode. However, as mentioned in my opening, this episode is never referenced again, so we have no reason to assume that the Enterprise's logs or sensor data were wrong, making the idea that everything from the void itself to the crew's interactions an illusion rather hard to swallow. Unless the experiment never ended, in which case the sensors are an illusion too. And that's why NAGILUM appeared to Picard after they left the void. They're still in the illusion. They never escaped, and the rest of the shows were a lie. Star Trek isn't real. I mean, Star Trek isn't real, but Star Trek isn't real. Anyway, I've been Rick. Thanks for watching this vid, and until next time, goodbye.